Hi, I'm Julie. You know that saying, when you marry someone, you marry their whole family? Well, let me tell you about the day my mother-in-law, Karen, decided to remind me who really ran my household. Life was good, me, my husband Mike, and our two kids, Jack and Emma, living in our cozy three-bedroom home. It wasn't huge, but it was ours. The kids shared the bigger upstairs bedroom, which they proudly decorated themselves. Emma's side adorned with unicorn wallpaper, Jack's with a space theme. For a 10 and 8-year-old, they were getting along surprisingly well. Then came that Sunday dinner. Karen showed up with her daughter Amy trailing behind like a shadow. The first red flag? Karen insisted on cooking instead of ordering our usual pizza. "Oh, sweetie, we need to discuss something as a family," Karen said in that saccharine tone that always made my teeth ache. I should have known. "Amy's having a rough time," she continued, patting Amy's hand like she was a delicate flower. "Third job this year," I muttered under my breath. "She needs a fresh start," Karen went on. "So I told her she could stay here for a while." I nearly choked on my meatloaf. "Here, Karen, we don't have a spare room." "Oh, that's no problem." Karen waved dismissively. "The kids can move to the basement. Amy needs a proper bedroom." The fork slipped from my hand. "Excuse me?" Mike started to say something, but Karen steamrolled him. "Michael, your sister needs help. Family helps family." Before I could fully grasp what was happening, Karen was already marching upstairs. We heard drawers opening and closet doors slamming. By the time I got there, she was tossing Jack's clothes into garbage bags. "Stop, you can't just move my children's things." I snapped. "Julie, don't be difficult," she replied without even looking at me. "The basement is fine. We'll set up dividers for privacy." Mike hovered uselessly in the doorway. "Mom, maybe we should discuss this." "There's nothing to discuss," Karen cut him off. "Amy needs support unless you're suggesting we throw her out on the street." And just like that, my husband deflated like a balloon with a slow leak. That night, Emma cried as her unicorn wallpaper was covered with Amy's vision board full of Pinterest quotes. Jack stood frozen, clutching his favorite space poster. As I lay in bed, listening to my kids trying to adjust to their cramped basement setup, I made a decision. Karen might think she'd won this battle, but she had no idea the war she'd just started. "Mike," I whispered, "you know this isn't right." "It's just temporary," he mumbled, rolling over. "Temporary," I repeated, bitterness coating the word. Like the last 3 times Amy needed temporary help. But this time was different. This time she'd messed with my kids. And nobody messes with my kids. 3 weeks. That's all it took for Amy to completely take over our house. It started with the bedroom, then the upstairs bathroom, then the kitchen. She treated the place like her personal bed and breakfast, with Karen as the overly involved manager. "Julie, Amy needs her protein smoothie before yoga," Karen chirped one morning. I glanced over at Amy lounging on my couch, scrolling her phone, while my kids tiptoed around their own home like unwelcome guests. Jack stopped inviting friends over, not that I blamed him. It's hard to host Nintendo tournaments in a basement that smelled like old gym socks. Emma's grades were slipping too. "I can't sleep," she whispered one morning, dark circles under her eyes. "The furnace growls all night, and the basement's too cold." She hesitated before adding, "Jack keeps crying. But he doesn't want Daddy to know." That's when I started the Karen Chronicles, a detailed log of every incident, complete with evidence. Videos of Amy screaming at the kids for making noise during her meditation. Screenshots of Karen's texts demanding organic groceries for Amy's healing journey. Photos of my children's belongings shoved into corners to make room for Amy's essential oil diffuser collection. The breaking point came when I found Emma's favorite stuffed unicorn in the trash. It was cluttering up the hallway. Amy shrugged, not even looking up from her vision board. "Isn't she too old for toys anyway?" I marched straight to Karen, who was reorganizing my pantry without permission. "This ends now. The kids moved back upstairs today." "Don't be ridiculous," Karen snapped. "Amy needs stability right now." "Stability? What about my children's stability while your 40-year-old daughter plays spiritual guru in their bedroom?" "I'm 32, Amy shrieked from the living room. "Julie," Karen's voice went icy. "I don't like your attitude. Michael and I have already discussed this." "Discussed what?" Mike appeared in the doorway, and for once, his timing was perfect. Mom's been making decisions about our house again, I said, holding up Emma's rescued unicorn. Did you know Amy threw this away? It's just a toy, Karen began, but Mike cut her off. That was Emma's birthday gift from Grandpa Tom before he passed, he said, his voice suddenly firm. Something shifted in Mike's face. Mom, we need to talk about boundaries. Boundaries? Karen gasped as though she never heard the word before. I'm trying to help your sister. I didn't raise you to be so selfish. No, Mike said quietly. You raised me to let you control everything. But this is my family too. My kids matter. Karen's face cycled through several shades of purple before she finally snapped. Well, I never. Amy, pack your things. We're leaving. But my yoga routine, Amy whined. Now. They stormed out, Karen swearing we'd regret our attitude. But watching the kids' faces light up when we told them they could move back upstairs, I knew the only thing I regretted was not standing up to her sooner. I'm sorry, Mike said that night, scrolling through my documented evidence. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. It's not over, I warned him. You know your mother, she's just regrouping. He nodded, looking like the partner I'd needed all along. Then we'll be ready. The calm lasted exactly 2 days. This time, Karen came armed with blueprints and a contractor. Since you're so concerned about space, she announced, waltzing into our kitchen during breakfast, I found the perfect solution. We'll add an in-law suite over the garage. Amy can have her own entrance. Mike choked on his coffee. Mom, we can't afford. Oh, don't worry about money. Karen spread the plans across the table, over our breakfast dishes. I talked to Bob at the bank. You have plenty of equity to refinance. My stomach dropped. I'd seen Karen cornering Mike outside his office the other day. Now I knew why. Actually, I cut in. We've been talking to our financial advisor about the kids' college funds. No extra loans. Karen's eyes narrowed. Education is important, but family comes first. Amy needs to grow up. The new voice made us all jump. Tom, Mike's dad, stood in the doorway looking grimly amused. Karen, you're doing it again. I'd never seen Karen speechless before. It was beautiful. Tom, you can't just walk in, she sputtered. Like you do? He raised an eyebrow. Sit down, Karen. We need to talk about Amy's temporary stays with Jessica, David, Marie, and Steve, and why none of them speak to us anymore. 3 families, Karen, Tom continued, his voice weary. You've driven away 3 families with this routine. I'm protecting my daughter. You're crippling her, Tom shot back, and I won't let you destroy another family. After they left, Karen practically dragging Amy away from her plans for a meditation garden. I called my best friend, Sarah. Record everything, Sarah advised, her lawyer instincts kicking in. Tom's testimony, the refinance scheme, everything. If Karen tries anything legal, we'll be ready. That evening, Tom returned alone, bringing photos, text messages, and financial records exposing Karen's schemes. I should have stopped this years ago, he sighed. But Karen's very good at making you doubt yourself. Not anymore, I said, adding his evidence to my collection. We're ending this cycle. Together, we spent hours building an airtight case. Karen had been hiding Amy's trust fund, keeping her dependent, and had even submitted loan paperwork in Mike's name, thankfully flagged by the bank. When do we confront her? Mike asked, both scared and determined. Family dinner, Tom suggested. She won't expect it there. She always uses public settings to control reactions. Perfect, I said, thinking of the group text Karen had sent that morning, demanding we host Sunday dinner to discuss the renovation. Let's give her exactly what she wants, an audience. Sarah helped us prepare our presentation, and Tom rallied the extended family members Karen had burned before. Even our kids contributed, bravely agreeing to share how their basement exile had affected them. Sunday was coming. Karen thought she'd be pressuring us into her plans. Instead, she was walking into her own reckoning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's letting someone build the stage for their own downfall. Sunday dinner started exactly as Karen had planned, except for the unexpected guests. She froze in the doorway, her eyes widening at the sight of Uncle David, Aunt Jessica, Cousin Marie, and her husband Steve, all seated in our living room. What are they doing here? She hissed at Mike. Family meeting, right? I said sweetly. You always say family comes first. Tom stood beside the TV, where we'd set up our presentation. Karen's face went pale when she saw the renovation blueprints, not just hers, but 3 identical sets from other homes. Before we discuss your plans, I began, let's review some family history. The next 30 minutes were brutal. David described how Karen's temporary arrangement had cost them their savings. Jessica showed pictures of their gutted house, abandoned mid-renovation when they finally broke free. Marie's voice trembled as she detailed the refinancing scheme that nearly cost her family their home. This ends now, Mike said, standing tall and facing his mother. No more renovations. No more manipulating Amy's life. No more controlling our family. How dare you, Karen shrieked. Everything I've done was for family. Amy needs to hear the truth, Tom interjected, pulling out a folder of documents. Tell her about the money, Karen, the account you've been managing since she was 18. Amy's head snapped up. What money? The room went silent as Tom explained. The inheritance from her grandmother. A trust fund that could have funded Amy's independence years ago. The account Karen had kept safe while pushing Amy from relative to relative. Mom? Amy's voice was barely a whisper. Is this true? I wanted to protect you. Karen sobbed, her voice shaking. To keep you close. To keep me dependent, Amy corrected, her expression hardening as she saw the pattern for the first time. I'm 32 years old, Mom. Living in my niece and nephew's bedroom because you convinced me I couldn't survive on my own. Karen left our house for the last time that night, alone. Amy moved in with Tom, who helped her access her trust fund and find a therapist. Last I heard, she was taking coding classes and healing from years of engineered helplessness. The kids spent an entire weekend redecorating their room. Emma's unicorn collection grew with new additions from every family member who came to celebrate. Jack's space posters multiplied until they covered nearly every inch of the walls. The sound of their laughter upstairs was better than any revenge. Mike still struggles sometimes. Years of conditioning don't disappear overnight. But he's in therapy too, learning to recognize manipulation and stand firm against it. As for Karen, she's lost her power, her audience, and her ability to hurt anyone else. The family she wronged stay connected through a group chat, sharing updates and supporting one another. Sometimes the best revenge isn't something you do to someone. It's finally permanently stopping what they've been doing to everyone else. This story has ended, but it raises an important question. At what point should adult children be cut off from family support? Karen enabled Amy's dependence for over a decade. But where's the line between helping someone through hard times and creating harmful patterns of helplessness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale of family drama and justice served, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories exploring complex family dynamics. And remember, sometimes the hardest part of helping someone is knowing when to stop.
My name is Carol, and I'm 22 years old. I just graduated from college, and I've got a story to tell you about my house, well, technically, my mother's house. Or it was, until she passed away from intestinal cancer 4 years ago and left it to me. Mom was always the planning type. Even before the cancer diagnosis, she made sure everything was in order. The house was hers free and clear, she'd bought it before she even met my dad, and thank God for that foresight. She made sure I knew about the will, too. This way you'll always have a home, she told me, her voice steady, despite everything she was going through. Things weren't always this complicated. My parents' marriage lasted 10 years before Dad decided to leave us for another woman. I was 9 when he packed his bags. No drama, no fighting over custody or property, he just left. The only thing he agreed to was paying for my college education. He set up a special account and transferred the entire sum for my future studies right away. I guess that was his version of child support. Dad started a new family pretty quickly. His wife Linda had their daughter shortly after, she's 10 years younger than me. I'd visit sometimes, staying at their rented house, but it never felt right. Linda would be busy with my half-sister, cooing over her latest accomplishment or fixing her hair. Dad was always working, claiming he needed to provide for his family. Funny how I wasn't really included in that category anymore. Carol, would you like to join us for dinner? Linda would ask, but her tone always suggested she hoped I'd decline. We kept things cordial though, exchanging birthday cards, holiday greetings, the occasional forced family dinner. It was all very proper and polite, in that uncomfortable way that makes your skin crawl. Mom made good money as a senior accountant, so when the cancer hit, she could focus entirely on treatment. I was 14 when we got the diagnosis. She quit her job immediately to focus on fighting the disease. For 4 years, we lived between hospital visits and treatment sessions. Mom never complained, not once. She just kept fighting, kept planning, kept making sure I would be okay. But cancer doesn't care about plans. I was 18 when she died, just weeks before I was supposed to leave for college in another state. The grief hit me hard, I could barely function. That's when Dad surprised me by actually stepping up. He, Linda, and my half-sister moved in temporarily to help me cope with the loss. I was too numb to question it at the time, too grateful for any support I could get. "We'll help you through this," Dad said, putting his arm around my shoulders. Linda nodded along, trying to look sympathetic while my half-sister explored what was now my house. By the end of summer, I was faced with a dilemma. College was starting in a few weeks, and I had no idea what to do with Mom's house, my house now. I couldn't bear the thought of selling it, but leaving it empty for 4 years didn't seem smart either. That's when Dad came up with his proposal over breakfast one morning. "Carol," he said, pushing his coffee mug aside, "I've been thinking. What if we stayed here? We'd pay all the bills, maintain the place. You wouldn't have to worry about anything while you're at school." I looked at Linda, who was making pancakes at the stove. She turned around and smiled. "It would be good for all of us," she added. "Sophie's already enrolled in the local school, and the house would be well taken care of." It made sense. During the 2 months they'd been staying with me, things had been surprisingly okay. Linda had stopped being so distant, and Sophie, my half-sister, had actually started treating me like a real sister instead of some stranger who showed up occasionally. So I agreed. Looking back, it seemed like the perfect solution. I packed up Mom's personal things, keeping what I wanted and storing the rest in the attic. I left for college feeling confident about my decision. Over the next 4 years, I came home during holidays and summer breaks. Those visits were nice, actually. Linda would cook these big welcome home dinners. "I made your favorite lasagna," she'd say, as if she'd always known my favorites. Sophie would drag me to her room to show me her latest artwork or tell me about school drama. During Christmas breaks, we'd all decorate the tree together. Dad would lift Sophie to put the star on top, while Linda and I argued good-naturedly about whether tinsel was tacky or classic. We'd sit around drinking hot chocolate, and sometimes I could almost forget that this wasn't the family I started with. Summer visits were different, longer, more relaxed. Sophie and I would spend afternoons by the community pool, and I'd help her with her summer reading. Linda would invite me to her book club meetings, and we'd actually have fun dissecting whatever romance novel they'd chosen that month. "Your sister's so good with Sophie," I overheard Linda telling Dad one evening. "It's nice having her home." That made me feel warm inside, like maybe we really had become a proper family. I called regularly during semesters, weekly chats with Dad about my classes, catching up with Linda about house maintenance, "The roses you planted are blooming beautifully, Carol," and FaceTime sessions with Sophie, who kept me updated on her middle school adventures. Everything seemed perfect. We'd created this strange but functional family dynamic, built on the foundation of my mother's house. I never imagined it could all fall apart so quickly, but I guess that's the thing about houses. No matter how solid the foundation, you never know what's going on behind the walls. Finally, at 22, with my degree in hand and a job lined up back home, I was ready to start the next chapter of my life. I'd already accepted a position at Marshall & Brooks Financial in my hometown. They'd interviewed me via Zoom and offered me the job right away. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Or so I thought. The taxi dropped me off in front of my house on a sunny June afternoon. I stood there for a moment, taking in the familiar sight. Mom's rose bushes were in full bloom, though they looked different from how she used to maintain them. The lawn was neatly trimmed, and new curtains hung in the windows. Little changes that had happened while I was away at college. Wheeling my suitcases up the front walk, I reached for my keys with a smile, already imagining sleeping in my old room tonight. But when I tried to unlock the door, something was wrong. The key wouldn't turn. I tried again, thinking maybe I was just tired from the journey, but no, the key definitely didn't fit. What the hell? I muttered, trying the key again before finally giving up and knocking on the door, loudly, since it was the middle of the day and they might be watching TV. Linda opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise. She was wearing an apron and had flour on her hands, like she'd been baking. "Carol, what are you doing here?" I wheeled my suitcase inside, noticing Dad and Sophie in the living room, both looking equally startled by my appearance. Sophie was sprawled on the couch with her phone, while Dad sat in his favorite armchair, Mom's old armchair, actually reading something on his tablet. "What do you mean? I live here," I said, looking around at what seemed like subtle changes to the living room decor. "Why were the locks changed?" Dad scratched his neck, that nervous habit he's had since forever. "Oh, that. Yeah, I changed them last month. For safety, you know. There were some break-ins in the neighborhood." "You could have told me," I said, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. "Or sent me a new key. I mean, this is my house." "We weren't expecting you," Linda said carefully, her arms crossed over her chest. She'd wiped the flour off her hands and was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Why not? I graduated last week. I told you guys I was coming home to start my new job." I looked between them, feeling increasingly uneasy. Something was off about their reactions. Sophie had even put down her phone and was watching the scene unfold with an odd expression. "Carol," Dad cut in suddenly, standing up. "Can we talk in the office for a minute?" I followed him into Mom's old office, my office now, technically. The room still had Mom's degrees on the wall, her collection of financial reference books on the shelves. He closed the door behind us, and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he turned to face me. "Listen, honey," he started, his voice low. "There's something you need to know. Linda, well, she thinks this house belongs to me." I stared at him, not comprehending. "What?" "I told her it was my house," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "That I gave it to your mother and you out of kindness after the divorce, and that after your mom passed, it reverted to me. She thinks you've just been living here because I allowed it." I must have stood there gaping at Dad for a full minute before finding my voice again. My first instinct was to storm out of the office and tell Linda everything. Now I understood her surprised look when I showed up. In her mind, I was just some freeloader trying to crash in their house. "I have to tell her the truth," I said, moving toward the door, but Dad caught my arm. "Please, Carol," he begged, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just give me a little time. I'll find us a new place to live, I promise. I just need to figure out how to tell her without destroying our marriage." "Destroying your marriage?" I hissed. "What about what you're doing to me?" He pulled a set of keys from his pocket, holding them out like a peace offering. "These are for the new locks. Please, sweetheart. Just a few weeks, that's all I'm asking. Let me handle this my way." I took the keys, feeling sick to my stomach. "Fine," I said finally. "But this is insane, Dad. You know that, right?" He nodded, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, honey. I'll make this right, I promise." But things started going downhill immediately. At dinner that night, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Linda kept shooting me these looks across the table, all her previous warmth gone. The woman who used to bake my favorite cookies and invite me to book club now acted like I was a stranger who'd wandered in off the street. "More potatoes, Dad?" Sophie asked, completely oblivious to the tension. "Would anyone mind if I redecorated the living room?" Linda asked suddenly, not looking at me. "The current setup is a bit dated." I gripped my fork tighter, knowing she was talking about Mom's furniture arrangement. Dad coughed awkwardly and changed the subject. The next morning, I was making coffee when Linda cornered me in the kitchen. She was still in her robe, hair uncombed, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Carol," she said, leaning against the counter. "I think we need to talk about your plans." "My plans?" "Yes. When are you planning to look for your own place?" She asked it casually, like she was asking about the weather. "Now that you have a job lined up, you should start thinking about moving out. You're a grown woman now, after all." I took a slow sip of coffee, counting to 10 in my head. "Actually, I've talked to Dad about staying here for now. He's fine with it." Linda's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she might argue. Instead, she just turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with my cooling coffee and a growing sense of dread about how this was all going to play out. The next 2 weeks were like living in a hostile environment. Linda's attitude shifted from cold to downright passive-aggressive. She'd accidentally wash my clothes with colors that would bleed, claiming she forgot which laundry basket was mine. She'd cook family dinners, but conveniently make just enough for 3 people, acting surprised when I came to the table. When I tried to watch TV in the living room, she'd suddenly need to vacuum right there. If I was using the kitchen to make breakfast, she'd barge in and start reorganizing the cabinets, muttering about how some people never learn to keep things tidy. She even moved my mother's favorite vase from its spot on the mantel to some corner shelf, claiming it didn't match her new decorating vision. The worst part was watching Sophie follow her mother's lead. My half-sister, who just weeks ago had been sending me memes and calling me for advice about boys, now rolled her eyes whenever I entered a room. She started calling me that girl when talking about me to her friends on the phone, loud enough for me to hear. Despite the tension at home, my professional life was taking off. I visited Marshall and Brooks Financial, where they showed me my future workspace, a nice corner desk with a view of downtown. My future colleagues seemed friendly and welcoming, especially Sarah from the risk assessment team, who offered to take me to lunch. "When do you start?" she asked over sandwiches. 2 weeks, I replied. Just enough time to settle in at home. That evening at dinner, I shared my start date with the family, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. "They showed me my office today. I start in 2 weeks. Linda's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down with exaggerated care. "Well, isn't that wonderful? Once you get your first paycheck, you can start looking for your own apartment. I know of some nice complexes across town, very affordable for young professionals." I caught Dad's pleading look across the table. His eyes seemed to beg me to keep quiet, to maintain his lie just a little longer. I stabbed at my peas and said nothing. To avoid the tension at home, I started reconnecting with old high school friends. Katie and Jessica were still in town, and we'd meet for coffee or shopping trips, falling back into our old rhythms as if no time had passed. But coming home was always uncomfortable. I'd walk in and hear hushed conversations from the kitchen or living room that would stop abruptly when I appeared. Dad and Linda would spring apart like guilty teenagers, papers would be hastily shoved into drawers, and fake smiles would plaster themselves across their faces. Saturday morning, I woke up to an unusually quiet house. No sound of Linda's weekend meal prep in the kitchen, no Sophie's music blasting from her room, no Dad watching sports on TV. The silence felt wrong somehow, like the calm before a storm. I padded downstairs in my pajamas, checking each room as I went. The kitchen was spotless, not just clean, but unused since the night before. The living room was empty, the throw pillows perfectly arranged on the couch. Sophie's boots, usually cluttering the entryway, were gone. Even Dad's car wasn't in the driveway. I checked my phone, no messages, no notes about where everyone had gone. My first thought was that maybe they'd gone out for breakfast, but something felt off. They never went out for breakfast without at least leaving a note. Even during these tense weeks, they'd maintained that basic courtesy. I tried calling Dad first, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Weird. I tried a few more times with the same result, that automated voice telling me the person I was trying to reach was unavailable. A knot started forming in my stomach. Finally, I called Linda. She picked up on the fourth ring, just as I was about to hang up. "What do you want?" Her voice was sharp, hostile in a way I'd never heard before. In the background, I could hear waves and what sounded like tropical music. "I just wanted to know where everyone is," I said, caught off guard by her tone. "I woke up and the house was empty." She laughed, an ugly, mean sound that made my stomach clench. "Oh, didn't we tell you? We're in the Maldives. First-class flights, luxury resort, the works. We didn't mention it because, frankly, we didn't want you tagging along and expecting us to pay for you too. Not that you'd know anything about paying for things yourself." "What? I wouldn't." "Save it," she cut me off. "I'm sick of this whole situation. You're nothing but a lazy freeloader, living in our house like you own the place. Your father might put up with it, but I'm done. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have a grown woman living in our house, eating our food, using our utilities?" My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my mother's chairs, actually, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. "Linda, No, you listen to me," she snarled. "Your father never loved you, you were just an obligation. He already wasted enough money on your college education, and now you're squatting in our house like some entitled princess. Well, I've had enough. Did you think you could just live here forever? Mooching off us while we work hard to maintain this home?" I could hear Sophie giggling in the background, and Dad's muffled voice saying something I couldn't make out. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. "When we get back," she continued, her voice dripping with venom, "I want you gone. Do you understand me? Pack your things and get out of our house. If you're still there when we return, I'll throw you out myself. And trust me, I won't be gentle about it. I don't care where you go, live on the street for all I care. You're not our problem anymore. And don't bother trying to call your father. He agrees with me, he's just too weak to tell you himself. We've already blocked your number. Have a nice life, Carol, or don't." I really couldn't care less. The line went dead. I sat in that kitchen for what felt like hours, fury slowly replacing shock. They were living in my house, the house my mother had worked for, had left to me, and they had the nerve to call me a freeloader? To try to throw me out? Well, I'd had enough of playing along with Dad's lies. I blocked their numbers on my phone, my hands still shaking, but now with anger rather than hurt. Then I started methodically going through the house, gathering their belongings. Linda's expensive clothes, Sophie's school stuff, Dad's golf clubs, everything went into boxes and suitcases. I worked through the entire Saturday, fueled by rage and bitter disappointment. By Sunday morning, I had their life packed up and stacked in the garage. I found a 24-hour locksmith who could come right away. He worked quickly, replacing the locks on all the doors. It cost a small fortune, but it was worth every penny. When he finished, I handed him my credit card, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction as I clutched the new keys. Monday morning, I started my new job at Marshall & Brooks. For 2 weeks, I threw myself into work, learning the ropes, making new friends, trying not to think about the confrontation I knew was coming. I kept their stuff in the garage, but I rearranged the house back to how Mom had it, removing every trace of Linda's decorating vision. Then came that Friday. I pulled into the driveway after work to find them standing there, Dad looking nervous, Linda red-faced with fury, and Sophie hanging back with a scowl. They must have just gotten back from their vacation, their suitcases were still in their rental car. Linda started screaming before I even got out of my car. "How dare you change our locks? How dare you lock us out of our own house?" I walked calmly past them to unlock the door. Linda followed, still yelling. "We're calling the police. This is breaking and entering. This is our house." I turned to face them, something inside me finally snapping. "No, Linda, it's not your house. It never was. This house belongs to me. My mother bought it before she even met Dad. She left it to me in her will. The only reason you've been living here is because I allowed it, temporarily. Linda laughed, but it was an uncertain sound. She looked at Dad. Tell her she's lying. Tell her this is our house. Dad wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. He just shrugged, his shoulders slumping. She's telling the truth. The house, it was always hers. I watched as the truth sank in, as Linda's face transformed from rage to calculation in a matter of seconds. Her entire demeanor changed, like a switch had been flipped. "Oh, Carol, sweetheart," she said, forcing a laugh. "You didn't think I was serious on the phone, did you? I was just joking. You know how I can get sometimes. All that sun and those tropical cocktails went to my head." "Stop it," I said quietly, but she kept going. "We're family. Remember all those nice times we had? The book club meetings, the holiday dinners? We can have that again." She took a step toward me, arms outstretched like she was going to hug me. Dad jumped in then, his voice thick with emotion. "Princess, I'm so sorry. I know I handled this all wrong, but I love you. You're my daughter. Please, can't we work this out?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The father who left when I was 9. Who paid for my education but missed my life. Who lied about my house, my inheritance, my mother's legacy. Work what out, Dad? The fact that you lied to your wife about owning my house? Or the fact that you stood by while she planned to throw me out of it? Linda turned back to me with that fake smile. "Carol, let's be reasonable. We can all live here together. We'll pay rent." "No," I said firmly. "We can't. Your things are in the garage. Take them and leave." That's when Linda's mask cracked again. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, you'd throw your own family out on the street?" I felt oddly calm as I replied, "You just spent what, $10,000 on a luxury vacation you deliberately hid from me? Pretty sure you can afford an apartment." "Carol, please," Dad tried again, reaching for my arm. "I know I messed up, but..." "No," I cut him off. "You didn't mess up, you lied. 4 years. You let your wife believe she owned my mother's house. You watched her try to redecorate it, rearrange it, erase every trace of Mom. And when she planned to throw me out, you said nothing." "I was going to tell her the truth," he protested. "When? After I was gone? After she'd finished making my house her home?" I shook my head. "I'm done. Get your things and get out." I walked inside and closed the door, ignoring Linda's screams about ingratitude and cruelty. Through the window, I watched them loading boxes from the garage into their rental car. Linda was still yelling, her face red with fury. Sophie was crying. Dad just looked defeated. It took them 3 trips to get everything. As they loaded the last box, Dad tried one more time, knocking on the door. I didn't open it. They finally left as the sun was setting. The next day, Dad tried calling from a new number. "Carol, please," he begged. "We can fix this." "No, Dad, we can't," I said. "Linda made it very clear how you all really feel about me. A freeloader? An obligation? Someone you never loved?" Maybe those were her words, but your silence said enough. That was 2 months ago. I still live in Mom's house, my house. I've repainted the walls, planted new roses in the garden, made it mine again. Sometimes I think about them, wonder where they ended up. But mostly, I think about Mom, and how she made sure I'd always have a home, no matter what. Dad still tries to call sometimes, from different numbers. I don't pick up anymore. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. The funny thing is, I'm happier now. My job is going well, I've made new friends at work, and for the first time since Mom died, I feel at peace in this house. Sometimes healing means letting go, of people, of lies, of the fairy tale of family you wanted to believe in.